today I'm going to continue from the last class where I was discussing about knife bias algorithm and the details about this algorithm. Now I will be discussing on the regression part, that is simple linear regression and different types of regressions. So it will be inconsistent with the previous talks where I have already explained about the linear regressions. So what I am supposed to introduce here, and this is like already clear what is linear regression and the other types of regressions which are required for the data analysis. So there are different perspective when we are talking about regression and data line fitting things. Then you need to understand the regression lines. So linear regression is a supervised learning algorithm in machine learning which is widely used for solving regression problems. And the regression is a type of machine learning problem where the goal is to predict a continuous support output variable based on one or more input variables. The goal is to find the best fitting linear equation to describe the relationship between the input variables and the output variable, which you can see in this figure. What are the dependent variable and the independent variable and the data points, and finally the line of regression. The equation is quite basic, which are mostly common for class 9 and 10 students who are, in general, they are using the linear equations, and the similar kind of equations are used for such purpose. So the goal in general is to find the best values for the in starting and ending points such that the line best fits the data points by minimizing the errors and the differences. Now, types of linear regressions. For example, as I mentioned, the different types of linear regression. The regressions we will be discussing, one is simple linear regression, which is like in simple linear regression, there is only one dependent variable and one independent variable. And the goal is to find the best fitting line to describe the relationship between the independent and dependent variables. The equation in general looks like what you can see here: y equals p naught plus p1 into x, where y is the dependent variable and x is the independent variable. B naught is the intercept term and B1 is the slope coefficient. Now, multiple linear regression, there are multiple independent variables and one dependent variable. The goal of multiple linear regression is to find the best fitting line to describe the relationship between the independent variables and the dependent variable. The equation for a multiple linear regression model can be written something little bit bigger, or we can say complex than the previous equation. Here you can see B naught, B1, B2, X1, X2, and Bn, something like, and Xn. That means the number of variables could change. Okay. So now in simple linear regression, you can see how the line looks like, and in multiple linear regression also. In simple multiple linear regression, there are two independent variables, x1 and x2. In both types of linear regression, the goal is to find the best value for intercept and slope coefficient that minimize the difference between the predicted values and the actual values. Linear regression is widely used in many real-world applications, such as finance, marketing, healthcare, for predicting the outcomes such as stock prices, customer behavior, and patient outcomes. Now, the linear regression line, you can see how it could look like. So one subtype is positive relationship, another subtype will be negative relationship. So if the line is basically slope is going up, then it is positive. If it is slope is going down, then it is negative relationship. So these two things you need to summarize. And now finding the best fit line. In machine learning, finding the best fitting line is crucial in linear regression as it determines the accuracy of predictions made by the model. The best fitting line is the line that has the smallest difference between the predicted values and actual values. The finding of the best fitting line in a linear regression model, in general, OLS or ordinary least squares regression is used. And this process involves calculating the sum of the squared differences between the predicted values and the actual values for each data point and then finding the line that minimize the sum of squared errors. So next part, best fitting line equations could be varying from one problem to another problem. So best fitting line is found by minimizing the residual sum of squares, that is RSS, which is the sum of square differences between the predicted values and the actual values. This is achieved by adjusting the values of the intercept and the slope coefficient. So once you have the values, then you can use the linear regression equation to make the predictions for new data points. And the equations are quite simple here. So in multiple linear regression, the equation would have more independent variables, as I have discussed. So finding the best fitting line is definitely as crucial as in linear regression as well as multiple linear regression. Now, what is cost function? The cost function is also known as function, loss function, or objective function, which is a measure of how well the model is performing. In linear regression, the cost function is used to calculate the difference between the predicted values and the actual values, which is also known as residuals or errors. The goal of linear regression is to minimize the cost function, which is achieved by finding the best fitting line that minimizes the sum of squared differences between the predicted values and the actual values. The most commonly used cost function in linear regression is mean squared error, that is MSE, and this is quite common, which is calculated as the average of the squared differences between the predicted and actual values, and which is shown on the right side here. Now, the cost function, as I said, that you need to minimize the cost function. So how well the current response surface fits the available data. This is one thing. A smaller values of cost function correspond to a better fit. And the machine learning goal is to construct the function such that the cost function is minimized. And in regression, the function is usually directly interpretable as predicted response. Now, gradient descent is I have discussed quite details in the previous videos, so I'm not going there. But what you need to know, this is optimization algorithm used to minimize the cost function in linear regression model. The goal of gradient descent is to find the values of the intercept and the slope coefficients that minimize the cost function by iteratively adjusting the values of these coefficients. Now, the basic idea, you are aware because there are details present on my YouTube channel if you have subscribed or not, but you can find the details videos. Now, how the gradient function descent or functions could look like, then you can look for the costs. For a very small, a gradient descent will be very slow in achieving the minimum. For very large, gradient descent may fail to reach the minima, as you can see in the right side figure. But for smaller values, it is achieving the minima. So gradient descent is optimization algorithm and commonly used for machine learning. Training data helps these models to learn over time, and the cost function within the gradient descent specifically acts as a barometer, gauging its accuracy with each iteration of parameter updates. Until the function is close to or equal to zero, the model will continue to adjust the parameters to yield the smallest possible errors. Once machine learning models are optimized, they can be powerful tools for artificial intelligence and computer science applications. Now, how these algorithms in general works. So training data set, then a learning algorithm, it depends on you what you are going to use.